ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the latest episode of Lads Discuss Death Battle. Joined with us is the exploding Euroli mate.
Tell me, why have you summoned me here?
Because Jaru left us and you were the second best we got. And joined with us also...
I'll take it.
Joined with us also is the spine-ripping Sean.
I've been hiding because the countdown to Weirdmageddon has started, and I don't want to be here anymore.
Well, speaking of weird, we have a weirdo among us. You could say a wolf in sheep's clothing. And our guest today is Wolf.
I'm coming for you, Billy.
Well, to be fair, you would be the first person to come for me.
Presenting vague threats.
Welcome, Wolf, to Lads Discuss Death Battle.
I'm practically a miniature celebrity amongst the community.
You're telling me we were joking about this in the private chat. It's basically 3 generations of Death Battle podcasters here.
This is also the third, Death Battle podcast that's a fan podcast that I've been a part of that was not my own. After that one, let's just say there was an unfortunate accident and it vanished under mysterious circumstances.
Probably for the best.
Probably for the best. Joke I was also going to make as well was you wouldn't be the first guy to come for me, but anyway.
But hey, that gives you a celebrity status. God damn, Bill's starting off already.
Oh boy.
Okay, so
that's also me just seeing the opportunity.
The other funny thing is when I first joined into the community and I got my I guess you could say my star status or celebrity status amongst this community, I was one of the newer members at the time. So, how quickly things change in the world.
I mean, while we're exchanging veteran stories, how I became sort of known in the Death Battle community was I was friends with Yang the Insane, who used to be a Death Battle fan.
Yes. I believe that is a name I have not heard in a long time. A long time.
And I posted videos of me watching stuff.
Fun fact also, this is the second time I'm a guest on a podcast that Mate has been a part of.
Oh, yeah.
Now, if only Jar was somewhere around, and he were doing a podcast, I'd probably be added onto that someday. I don't know.
I doubt it. Although, speaking of doubts, so people, the last Lads debate was Monster Hunter versus Aaron, and I declared it the Monster Hunter would win, but we thought, let's see who the fans would suggest. So, with 23 votes, Monster Hunter wins again with 91%.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, so, do you know...
Yeah, it was a pretty lopsided poll.
I will be honest, when we were talking about Lads debates for this year, we really thought Dragonite was going to stomp Dragonborn, and Aaron versus Monster Hunter was going to be one of our more even fights.
Instead, it's been the complete opposite.
Yeah, I feel as though more people were split on Dragonite versus Dragonborn this year. I generally thought, okay, one could turn into a giant monster, and the other one mostly fights animalistic monsters. Surely it's not as OP as one can fight a dragon that could destroy reality. Never fucking mind.
Yeah, when I talked to people behind the scenes about this one, they were like, we think Aaron probably wins, and I'm like, okay, fair enough. And then I had to bring up Altreon, and everyone was like, the fuck?
Also, if you sometimes hear another voice in the room, that is my buddy Phil. He surprised me by coming up here yesterday, so.
Right then. Well, speaking of Phil, even though that's not a good segue into this at all, but I guess I could say we got our Phil of the previous episode.
Boo!
Yeah,
Boo!
I tried.
You tried to make that work.
For your pun.
Listen, I'm a podcaster, not a pun maker, even though I was the one that came up with puns that Yang the Insane claims that she was the pun maker of our friendship. But anyway, yes, Martian Manhunter versus Silver Surfer. When this episode was announced, I was like, you know what? Maybe I don't need Manhunter versus Piccolo. Maybe this could be a good episode. It's very unique. There's plenty of possibility for this to be great. Then the episode came out, and I just felt...
Oof.
Ooh, yikes.
Yeah, so if you saw my reaction, people... let's actually get into the episode. Okay, so analysis-wise, was good. Storytelling-wise.
I mean, I thought the storytelling was interesting about it.
Yep, the same.
I thought what I'm worried about is, oh god, the characters are becoming self-aware that they're actually in a show where they're being pit to fight each other. Oh god, what is happening?
But okay,
This isn't going to become Double vs. Pinkie Pie 2, is it?
funny enough, I brought that up.
I think I've seen people like another reactor actually talk about like how Martian Manhunter had a more tragic backstory than Guts, and I'm like, I don't think you're wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the brutality-wise, actually, no, I'll still say that it's pretty fucked up. So, okay, yeah, I will say, in terms of the writing this analysis, I would argue is probably the best writing we've had when it comes to describing these characters.
Yeah.
But, and I will say, the end analogy for both these characters was really deep and really well said, because I first had this complaint at first in my reaction was that it did feel as though they immediately skipped to the feats of the characters, which I thought was a problem with Killua versus Misaka. Is that they just immediately...
Yeah,
It's weird that they did that. I noticed that.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. It was just like, here's the feat screen. I'm like, okay, we're getting to that a bit soon.
What? Why?
Yeah.
That's not how it's supposed to be!
Yeah, that's a thing I've been noticing a lot with this season. Now, I'm sure there's already some death battles in the past that have done that we might have glossed over, but it's becoming more like noticeable in this season. Like Ant-Man versus Atom.
The only two times, yeah, the only two times I've seen them do that weirdly, where it's like they shuffle things up in terms of order of where things are, was Master Chief in his appearance in his fight. They put the background stuff at the very end of his analysis, and then Cloud's analysis in his fight, they put I guess his arsenal, and then his actual background stuff.
Yeah, but what I mean is like yeah, that's what I mean. Like it's more noticeable now. Like Atom's story kind of got glossed over just to have that big speech at the end. Misaka had that. There was another episode this season that had that, but I can't remember it. But I'll probably put it on screen. I'm pretty sure I'll remember while I'm editing it. I tend to do that, but I was happy to know, oh, they were just saving it just to give that big, really great, well-written analogy for these characters. I think, especially with comic books these days, or people in the verse community that look at comic book fans, because many of them, not naming names, but many people just go like, oh, character OP, they have no character. It's like, well, maybe when you look at it from a verse point perspective, like, okay, yeah, they're OP, but maybe look into the...
I find that ironic, because... I find that ironic, and that's because of the guy I mentioned here a few minutes ago who's sitting right behind me. Phil here is not really a DC fan. There are like 3 characters from all of DC that I think you actually like, Phil. Am I correct? Yeah. But it's mainly Batman and Batman-related characters and Martian Manhunter. And he doesn't really like Superman at all, for a lot of the same reasons of, OP, not really much character. But Martian Manhunter is a ton of character to him.
Yeah, well, that's even mentioning Superman. It's like, okay, then, Superman, sure, he is OP. I'm not even going to dispute that. Like, ever since they showed that feat where he flew so fast, he broke the bonds of infinity. Look, people, I am a big DC fan. Don't think I know every single detail about DC, man. I'm not that nerd emoji. Like, you know, I have a life. I socialize. I go to the pub. You know, sometimes I'll talk about nerdy stuff. Other times I'm like, I want a Pepsi with a lager. Like, you know. But when I discovered how powerful he is, it doesn't ruin like my perspective on Superman. It's like, okay, Superman. I'm even going to say now, if they were to do Goku vs Superman now, my money's on Superman 100%. Like,
oh yeah, Goku's fucked.
He is beyond fucked. But that doesn't mean...
Even beyond that, though.
It doesn't ruin my perspective on Superman. I've recently binged, except for the finale, I've recently binged my Adventures of Superman. Freaking top-notch show, man. It's been so long since we had a good animated Superman show. So I was
It really is, because that's the thing, is... I think a lot of people get hung up over, certain people in the versus community. I'm not going to say names, but a lot of them like to boil down how good is the actual character to what's their power level, and then they focus solely on that, and then they assume the stronger the power level, the less personality the character has, whereas the weaker they are, the more personality they have to have in order to make them interesting. It's like, no, that is a complete misnomer, and that's just throwing away a ton of things about this character just because you're only focused on one thing about them.
Right. And there have been times where you can say that about some comic characters, but a big example of that, like being the opposite, Doctor Doom, everyone knows how powerful he is, but they still love him for his character and his charm.
Yeah,
he's
an engaging villain. Or another character in comic books is Iron Man. Many people tend to forget this. Many times in the Marvel stories, he becomes a villain. Many heroes don't respect him, not even Spider-Man. Have you guys seen that picture where he's punching, when Spider-Man's punching Tony after he was taking the piss out of Parker Industries? But
I have not.
I don't think I have, no.
It's hilarious. But the reason...
Also, this whole time, I've been playing Chief vs. Doom Guy in the background. Yeah, the background is at the end.
Yeah,
I noticed that immediately when I first saw it.
I never noticed that in all these years.
But yeah, like the reason Iron Man's an engaging, I would say an anti-villain. Really, I don't think he's like on the level of Doom level villains. But yeah, Iron Man is stupid OP. Like he originally used to just be a man with an iron suit, but now he can make suits that could battle the Celestials. It's like, but that doesn't mean he's a bad character. It shows just how much, and not only that, with these sort of characters that have been around for nearly 100 years.
No matter how small or humble they start out as, eventually they're gonna get ramped up, even if you don't consider things like power scaling. Because...
like if a character's been around...
I think overall it makes sense for him to do it this way from Martian Manhunter, because everyone knows the personality and story of Martian Manhunter more so than what he's actually done.
Thank you, Justice League cartoon.
Yeah, I will say, like, I grew up with Martian Manhunter, I've read a lot of his comics, was not aware of his origin. I went by the origin of the anime show. Oh, he was an alien that came to Earth. The moment I was like, oh, scientists summoned him to Earth and he tested his powers. The man had a fucking heart attack. I was like, I have never read this comic book. That's fucked.
But still, like, a lot of people knew, like, what he was and who he is as a character, so having him go over what he's done beforehand actually makes sense for someone like Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, because I think Martian Manhunter's always kind of been a B-lister, where it's like, you know him because of the show, you might not really know much about him before that, or even after the show's done, you might sometimes even forget about him because...
Oh no, he's a pretty popular character.
He's not a big A-lister. He's popular, but I wouldn't necessarily put him in like the highest echelons of DC's popular characters.
No, I'd say he's more on the level of like Red Hood sort of popularity. He's popular, but obviously when you compare them to like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, everyone knows who they are. And hell, more people who know who Hal Jordan is over Jon Stewart, but I would say Jon Stewart's a much better Green Lantern.
But I think as far as popularity went, that's like the same level as his opponent was, Silver Surfer.
Yeah. Like, it's a name you know, there's just stuff about them you probably don't really realize, or you only know about what you think you know from things like the shows, or the movies in some cases.
That was the case for me. I only ever heard of Silver Surfer thanks to Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Oh God.
No, he stole the movie for me. Like, people can have their problems with those films, but personally, I'd say those films are actually pretty good in comparison to what we got afterwards. But Silver Surfer scenes were really good. Like, you know, when he's racing against the Human Torch, and he just goes, like, he full on like goes through his board just to go upside down. Completely pointless, but was a cool shot.
Yeah, it's clear that he was meant to be the focus, just of how cool is he? What can we do with the cool special effects? You know, like you'd expect with a mid-2000s film.
So cool, apparently it drained the budget to the point where they couldn't even afford lights for the next film.
Oh, wow. Well, good news, the film... Oh, wait, I see what you did.
God damn it, mate.
That was good. That was clever. I was thinking.
I know what you're talking about, mate. They didn't make a third Fantastic Four film. They made a Four-stick film.
It's a shame they never. It's a shame they never did the sequel, Fan 5 Stick. I heard the Silver Surfer was going to be a 5th member. Or maybe Spider-Man with a paper bag over his head. Yes, I'm not kidding. When Spider-Man joined the Fantastic Four, they couldn't afford a mask for him, so he put on a paper bag. How he is able to... how he's able to... you know what, mate? Let me show you that. Hold on, I need to Google that for you. You're going to be like, there's no way he fought
We need to see this now. You know what this, Phil? You're a big Spider-Man fan. When he first joined the Fantastic Four, they couldn't afford a mask for him, so they just put a paper bag over his head.
Yeah, in fact, you can...
Oh, you knew this. Okay.
Yeah, here it is, mate. I've got an image of it. In fact, you can unlock this in the Spider-Man game. Now, don't ask how he's able to swing and just stay on his head, but it's amazing.
Comic book logic. That's how. It's the same logic of how the power cosmic works. We don't know.
Let me say this, people.
They don't know, and quite frankly, you wouldn't care if we explained it.
Let me just make this clear, people. That Reed Richards is able to make a suit that is capable of making sure the Human Torch doesn't go supernova. He's capable of making pants that don't tear apart when the Thing is trying to get dressed. He can't make a mask for Spider-Man.
What he did was like a paper bag that's... What he made is a paper bag that stays on his head constantly.
Oh, and
maybe Peter put like some of his web in the paper bag, so it like stuck to his head a bit.
It seems like a disaster waiting to happen.
Hey, it dissolves after a while, so...
I mean, that is true. Anyway, weird bagheads aside. So yeah, Silver Surfer, learning about him. I will say, I feel as though if Martian Manhunter did win, spoilers people, he lost, I would have been sad.
Oh no, I've been spoiled.
I would have been sad if Silver Surfer died, because it's like, he clearly never... It's kind of similar with Galactus, like, he doesn't enjoy what he's doing, but it's...
I think both of them are really tragic. Both of them, the way they made it, if either one loses, it's tragic. It's kind of like what they did with setting it up with All Might versus Might guy, but instead it's just, now I feel bad about both of their stories the entire time, as opposed to, oh yeah, they're both really cool. Oh wait, one of them has to kill the other. Shit.
Yeah, I think that's the case with a lot of hero versus hero death battles. Like when it's the hero versus villain, you're rooting for the hero to beat the villain, and then it just makes it tragic when you see someone like Doomsday rip off the Hulk's head. Except for me, I was happy at that.
Pop goes the weasel.
Even with hero versus hero ones, it's not always that common for me. But it's like when they build them up as being like super excitable and super cool and super awesome, or it's like both of these characters are extremely tragic stories amongst all the other costume characters in their lineups. It's like, god damn it, one of them has to die. Crap.
Yeah.
Don't you just love tragic stories?
No!
That was sarcasm.
Wait, that was sarcasm?
My point still stands!
Still.
Yeah.
I think that
there are people that would say yes to that.
There are good writings in this analysis by Joshua. I think it was well done. And some of the jokes in the analysis were hilarious. Like the doormat for Death's Door.
There was a lot of jokes.
That's a blink and you miss it one.
Yeah.
I saw Jean Grey, please use back entrance.
I saw that in my reaction and I could not stop laughing.
Yeah, I was
gonna pause it to see what it said, but I was like, you know what? I don't. We got to keep watching it because I was watching it with Phil here over the internet, and it's like I can't pause it right now. But I saw Jean Grey. I'm like, oh god damn it, son of a bitch.
Fun fact: after I was done watching the episode, I went back to check, laughed my ass off, and when I posted my reaction, someone in the comments was like, "Oh, that doormat said this," and I'm just thinking to myself, I clearly saw it in the fucking video.
People are pretty Jewish. And I just love the gag of Boomstick not pronouncing the DC villain's name.
Oh, that was fantastic.
Listen, as a DC fan, even I can't pronounce that name.
Mr. Plexiglass, Mr. Mixed Pickles, f*** your name, that's whatever.
the escalation to fuck your name.
Yeah, Parker had way too much fun doing that. He's just like, no, again, Funko Pop.
Yeah, do you know what? He got a really crazy redesign in The Adventures of Superman, which I was really thinking to myself, when did Dragon Ball cross over? But
yeah,
but
getting back on to the topic of the actual episode, though, like, I feel like the writing for this one was this season was, for this episode particularly, was especially strong, because typically this is around the point in the season where the writing in the season gets really good.
Yeah, I mean...
Because early on, it feels like because of how quickly they have to make it, they usually do a lot of the first takes, and then around the middle of the season, it's like, okay, yeah, no, now it's getting good.
Yeah, well,
I
I think there's been some strong written episodes, like Dragonborn versus Chosen Undead, despite being a second episode, had some really good writing and fan service for both Chosen Undead and Skyrim, which I will say, fight-wise, there was more Dark Souls fan service.
I think it's because of the I think that's due in part to how late the season started. So it's like they've given it early episodes more time to really actually mesh well and like get the writing on par with what it's supposed to be near the middle or end of the season.
Especially with a bigger writing team now. They got Joshua, they have Liam, Lousy, Ben, and who knows
Tiki.
who else might. Yeah, and Tiki.
What, they got the miraculous charm to help out? Damn. Okay,
and then there's the fight itself.
I made that reference and only Sean laughed. I'm thinking to myself, I think I just outed myself for watching Miraculous. I thought that was a popular thing.
And then there is the actual fight itself, which I
I
love how they actually reference the Silver Surfer NES game with the most common image you will ever see in that game.
Alright, before we get to the fight though, Wolf, yeah, so my main gripes with the analysis, don't you guys say there was a lot of funny? As Wolf said, it was mostly a blink and you'll miss it type of humour, and of course, humans blink a lot. So I did miss a lot of humour. I mentioned to Sean and Mate, I only saw that on my rewatches or when I watched their reactions. And that was the other thing as well, some of the humour was a bit dragged out, the whole like boomstick, like doing the whole surfer sort of thing, which did start off as funny, but then did drag on for a little bit.
I mean,
yeah, I still love how he's. I
mean, they only did it twice. If it was a third time, that's where I've been like, okay, yeah, you're kind of doing this a bit much.
No, I meant it dragged out on the first one. Like, it was funny, but usually when it comes to that sort of humour, it's glossed over quickly. Like, take for example, Sonic versus Mario, the rematch. When Wiz is testing the weapons on Boomstick, it's really quick and it's funny. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And then Boomstick has the great line like, I've seen things. Whereas this one, it was just, okay, Boomstick, basically say every single thing that Michelangelo would say in the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And
it's very much, that joke is very much similar to the Jizz and Broomstick one they had with Static versus Miles, which was also not one I was too fond of.
Well, it wasn't the fact I wasn't fond of it, it just overstayed its welcome. It's kind of like when you do
that one overstayed its welcome too. That's what I'm saying. It's like, it's very similar in that regard, and usually jokes like that don't really work.
And
I think didn't they also do they didn't do a lot of cutaway gags from Martian Manhunter, but then I remembered, oh yeah, because they did it for the sponsor they got in One Piece.
Well, I know it was Boomstick setting his hand on fire.
That was actually funny. If you see my reaction, I laughed hysterically at that. But this is something similar I said in my Black Adam versus Apocalypse video, or maybe it was a different one. Laughing once in the analysis doesn't make it a funny analysis. Like the previous episode, Raven versus Jean Grey, how there was so many funny moments and highlights for me, whereas this one I merely laughed once.
That's fair.
What's funny, I think most of this season, or maybe even episodes, I've probably laughed more at Dummy than I have at Wiz and Boomstick.
To be fair, also, these are two characters that are so extremely tragic that you kind of can't really do much with comedy with them.
3 words: Guts versus Dimitri.
Yeah, but Guts versus Dimitri, while it's tragic, they also come from series that they also have story stuff around them that's not just tragedy, where it's like tragedy is most of what these two are surrounded in.
Right.
Yeah, agree to
I do-
disagree.
I do think that it depends on how you feel about the humor, but the jokes do land when you notice them.
I suppose.
Oh yeah, they absolutely do.
I will say, missed opportunity when talking about Martian Manhunter's fire weakness. Could they not have had Boomstick just say, "Yeah, fire is everyone's weakness. It's fucking fire."
I think that would have worked if it was
Yeah,
like.
I was
like-
expecting something like that. Ooh, fire's his weakness. Yeah, great. You know who else is also weak to fire? People.
I think it's mostly due to the fact that, similar to Green Lantern, it was like if this was like early Martian Manhunter, yeah, that is a very, yeah, that's a weakness that's common. But because they've also established like, well, yeah, he used to be weak to fire, but he's sort of grown a resistance to it. Depends on like how it's utilized. Like for instance, I never realized you could just mentally mess with him, and if he thinks he's on fire, that will hurt him. I'm not.
It's like the time.
I'm not a
it's like the time
scientist,
they
but-
cut the green.
I'm not sure that's how it works. I don't think your nerves would
Normally it
react to
would
your
be,
brain.
but I think it's because of how Martian Manhunter's powers specifically work that it makes sense that happens. It's very much similar to how apparently if you make a Green Lantern think they're blind, they will make themselves blind as a result.
Yeah, comics are weird. But that's my thoughts on the
Yeah.
analysis. Do you guys have any last saves before we actually talk about the fight, in which it's probably going to be my hottest take of this season, but it seems many people are kind of mixed on this fight from the comments.
I got everything out of the way.
I think the analysis we've done a good job talking about it.
It was good story-wise and analysis-wise, just not memorable for me anyway. Mate, have you said your piece, or is there anything else you want to add?
Nah, I'm good.
Speaking of Piece, this season of Lads Discuss Devs brought to you by Netflix's One Piece. I'm kidding. If you see
Did
my,
Steve get you that sponsorship?
if you guys see my reaction, you just see how I open that up. Just me looking horrified at my screen.
No wonder your hashtag for your reaction video was why Netflix.
It's just me staring at the monitor, just looking at the camera like, no comment.
Yeah, you open up the YouTube version that has the sponsorship, and it's just One Piece. Wait, what? Why is this here?
I will,
then we get to see Boomstick dressed as Luffy.
you know what, mate? Okay, look, I'm shitting on it.
Not the worst thing in the world.
I mean, okay, as much as I'm trashing it, the special effects don't look too bad for it, but I will also say, who knows, maybe it could be good. It actually has the people behind the anime, so maybe we're shitting on it, and it could actually be a good show. But speaking
Or
of...
it could be Netflix doing Netflix things again.
Netflix is like 50-50. Sometimes they bust out things like Namawa, which is amazing, or they bust out something like Bebop.
Well, I meant particularly with their adaptations, where it's like usually 2080, where it's like sometimes you have the good adaptations like Carmen Sandiego or Castlevania. Other times you get Death Note.
Oh, I forgot that was a thing. But anyway, speaking of shitting on things, though, I guess this is where I come in with this episode. Now, I will say, this is without a doubt the most unique fight this season.
Oh,
Now,
for sure.
I would say that, yeah.
But
At
when
least until we get to what's coming next.
Now, when I say unique, I meant on how it starts up, how they have the characters act, and of course the death. Upon saying that, though, I was bored a majority of this fight.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not a lot
kinda-
happens. A lot of it is just them flying around.
Yeah, which
I gotta
and-
agree with you on that one, Billy.
and-
A lot of nothing.
I will say, this fight just made me wish we got Piccolo versus Manhunter instead. Look, I don't care how much of a stomp that
Oh
is.
no! I wouldn't even go that. I wouldn't go that far.
No,
Come on, man.
Listen.
Don't look, Gohan.
Listen, people. I get it. It is one-sided as fuck. But if we can make Omni-Man versus Homelander and Blake versus Mikasa look really good, they could easily make Martian Manhunter versus Piccolo good.
There's also a lot of other one-sided fights that
I thought
go
you were
hard.
gonna-
I have my own problems with why I would not want Martian Manhunter versus Piccolo. Besides just it's one-sided as fuck, but
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. It is one-sided, but of course, this is my recommendation. This is my most wanted. Was it last year live stream or was it the year before? I can't remember.
It was the past
One
live
of them.
stream we did, yeah.
Yeah.
Like the past live stream last year.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the last year one because that was when we were doing Nora versus Reinhardt, Lads Debate, which won that with obvious reason. Sean, sorry to say.
Woo!
Bull honky. The story mode's out for Overwatch. I demand a rematch.
Yeah, just keep dreaming.
I thought they got rid of that because Actibliz is being Actibliz, and that is to say, awful.
No, they actually did come out with the story missions, and I played them, and they're fun.
But anyway, so the reason why I say this episode made me want Piccolo versus Martian Manhunter more, because one, they would make it probably be a blend of a Justice League animated and a Dragon Ball episode. Like, as much as people like to trash 1 Minute Melee these days, at least Martian Manhunter versus Piccolo was fun, even if the ending was very predictable. It was fun. It was fast-paced. There was a lot of great fan service, even to Team 4-Star. Like, even though, yeah, that's not actually what happened with Nail and Kai, but you get what Kami. Yeah, you get what I'm saying though. It's like it was fun to watch, and even some other. I think Cartoon Fight Club also did Martian Manhunter versus Piccolo. That might
Oh
have been
god!
enough.
Please don't mention that. Please don't mention that. Please don't mention
look.
that. I have a bone to pick with them.
Well, at least take it outside. But anyway, also I do find it funny you say bone and your profile pictures of a dog.
It's not a dog. It's a Manectra. Get it right.
It's a dog. Just accept it, Wolf.
But
Whoa,
Yeah.
You're barking up the wrong tree here, pal.
damn it, Sean, I'm going to fucking murder you.
All right then. Now let's roll over and keep talking about this episode.
God damn it!
Okay, let's stay on topic.
Okay.
Okay, I
Anyway,
thought you were
but
going to
the
make
fight
a pun.
itself. Yeah, the problem here,
That
is it is a
was one.
lot of nothing going on.
Wait, mate, hold on.
Like, it's
Mate,
mostly just them talking, which, I mean, that makes sense for them. But, I mean, it gets really kind of just monotonous after a bit.
I mean,
No,
how much
I
of
will
this-
say... Go ahead.
I was gonna say, how much of this is just them flying with like nothing going on? To be fair.
Oh,
Other
yeah.
than them just debating philosophically with each other.
Yeah, that's kind of my main problem. Don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
If this was like a official written crossover between them, like when Marvel and DC did the crossovers, this would have been a great comic crossover. But as a death battle where you mainly... It'd be like going to WWE. Do you really want to see these guys debate Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton? Or do you want to see some guy freaking go John Cena and freaking suplex the man?
Yeah, I will say one of my favorite highlights from that is getting the image of the game over screen from the Silver Surfer NES game to make a cameo appearance. That was just that was a highlight for me because
I haven't even played that game. I love
figured
that.
they were going to reference that. Another person I was talking to was like, "So what are you expecting them to? Are you expecting them at all to reference the King of the Hill spot that they did for Fox?"
Oh my god, that's another missed opportunity.
Exactly. Like I was expecting that to at least appear in like the clip section they do before the fight itself starts.
I mean, I think we even discussed this last episode, like... You know, these characters are, well, mostly Silver Surfer's known to cross the multiple universes, so you'd think, oh, maybe they'll do something clever, like maybe they'll appear in Ant-Man, or Ant-Man vs. Atom, or any other
You know, like what, Deadpool versus Pinkie Pie done right.
Yeah, and...
I was also gonna say Harley Quinn and Jinx technically also did that.
Yeah, it's...
For a bit, yeah.
And do you know, this is actually going to go into
That was for me, apparently.
This is also going to go into my other point, is that... So, I got the idea they were going to do where they realise that they've been put into this scenario where they have to kill each other. Now, obviously, in a modern death battle, I said this in my reaction, I get it that in a modern death battle, that's not what people want to see. Like, if Deadpool versus Pinkie Pie was done today, they would want to know who'd win. But the whole idea is when they started seeing past the fourth wall, they decided to basically give the middle finger, not literally, because one of them's for kids, and basically say, you know what, you want us to kill each other? How about no? And then they had a birthday party. Whereas this one, it feels as though they wanted to do that, but instead they're trying to make it like a story like, oh, Silver Surfer feels bad for killing Martian Manhunter. Like, well, now that you realise you've been forced to do this, why not just don't? But obviously, for a death
Yeah.
battle's sake, they have to do it because the whole point of the show is to find out who would win and who would lose. And it just comes off as just they wanted to be deep and philosophical, but still be a death battle. And as weird it is to say, I don't think you could be both. Like,
There is a way to get it to work, but it has to be done in a very specific way.
yeah, or
And unfortunately, for their first attempt at it, it was not done well.
yeah.
You
No,
know what I'm surprised by, though, talking about that, like that ending real quick, that a lot of people weren't mad at, that they were mad at for another episode? Martian Manhunter spoiling the outcome, technically. Because a lot of people gave Hercules vs. Sun Wukong shit for that, yet no one does it here.
oh no, people were.
Hypocrisy.
No,
Oh yeah.
no, there were people in the comments giving shit for it.
Yeah.
No.
So sorry.
Funny enough, Martian Manhunter's 1 Minute Melee with Piccolo also did that.
That is true, but at least the fight was entertaining enough to forgive it. It's just,
Yeah, that's kind of the this.
and it's probably gonna sound bad for
Dude.
me. This is probably my least favorite fight this season, and I would even dare say at least Atom versus Ant-Man had a pretty good death, and there were some highlights within the fight.
Yeah, I gotta
I mean-
agree with you on this one right now. Spoiler, a little bit of a spoiler for that. Yeah, this right now, at least on initial opinion, we'll see what it does with the rewatch. But guys know I do death battle rankings. Right now, this is in the bottom, and I don't like that.
Which is a
I
shame.
have it at
I mean, this fight does have a big highlight for me, like when Martian Manhunter breaks the board while turning into that dragon and clawing that moon. That
Okay,
was
yeah,
awesome.
That was awesome. Like I said, also the Silver Surfer NES reference was great, but
Similar to my point about-
there's a lot of.
Similar to my, oh, I only laughed once during the analysis portion. One cool moment isn't enough for me to like. For instance, Rise of Skywalker, Kylo Ren versus Rey had a one really good shot. That doesn't make that fight really well made. So
Yeah.
that's my point
Like,
here. is
there's-
that it,
It's a saving grace, but a saving grace doesn't necessarily make it. Doesn't really fully save the episode.
Yeah,
That's
like-
the problem.
like
Well,
a man.
And there are a
for-
couple saving graces here, just not enough for me to really even consider it an okay episode. I think this is a bad episode.
I think a big saving grace for it, though, I know we're always like on the negative, but some positive stuff was just the voice acting for both of these two was done really well.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
because like
So-
I originally thought, holy shit, did they get the actual guy from the Justice League cartoon for Martian Manhunter to voice him here? I don't
No.
think they did, but whoever did
No,
it did an amazing job.
I have the credits put up right here. Martian Manhunter was paid by Cameron.
Yeah,
Last appearance, Black Adam.
yeah, Cameron's amazing with his range.
Huh. Played another DC character and died.
I'm noticing.
Laying-
I'm no-
Maybe don't get that to happen if you're a DC character, if you're a DC fan.
But I guess I'll say my
Yeah.
final points, and then you guys can add a bit more to it. So, and the end analysis of it, even the explanation, like, you know, Buzik going like, oh god, it's so tragic, we had to have these guys fight. So anyway, let me explain why they went, but it didn't come off as natural or even in a funny way. Like, I was expecting Buzik to pull off, like, I can't remember his name, is it Richard? It's the guy from Top Gear, I can never remember his name, but when, you know that meme, that, oh no.
Richard Hammond.
Yeah, he goes, oh no. Anyway, last week, I was expecting Boosted to do something like that, but then it's like he goes dramatic, and then immediately Wiz then segues into it, and then Boosted's like normal again. It's like a bit of inconsistency with what they're trying to do. I think that's the thing. It's so inconsistent. They want to go very dramatic with this episode, yet then they don't want to go dramatic with
Inconsistency
it.
is fine. Inconsistency, in my opinion, has kind of been how the season's been overall.
No, there's been
Because,
some
like, sometimes you get
consistency.
an amazing episode, other ones you get one that's just like, okay, I guess.
No, that's not what I meant. I meant in
Not in
terms
terms
of
the
like,
ideas, just
the tone of the episode. Like the other ones have been
yeah, even
other
the
ones-
tone is inconsistent sometimes, but
No, most of the season they've been consistent, but like for instance, when they were describing the Chosen Undead's tragic like origins and the dark twist of Dark Souls,
yeah.
they didn't try and sugarcoat it at the end of it. They generally made a good meaning behind it, and they still kept on to that whole theme through the rest of the fight. Like as long as he holds on to his purpose, but sadly he would keep going hollow. Whereas this one, they tried to do that again, but then they immediately went to traditional death battle. So here's why this person lost. It's like, well, okay. And the other thing is, well, now I know they don't no longer say this was really close, but they try and make it sound like both were really even. But then when you look at the sidebars where it has like advantages and disadvantages, it was clearly showing that, yeah, maybe Martian Manhunter didn't have a chance after all. At least that's how they presented it. Despite them trying to say,
like, even a good example of, in my opinion, where they actually kept that tone really well while still getting to work with, like, okay, now we actually have to explain why we did the reasoning. Oddly enough, Tanjiro versus Jonathan really kept that tone. Where it's like, that ending is very hard, is like really sad and depressing, so... And it keeps that well, but while in character, they're like, okay, we need to get back into the actual analysis portion.
Yeah, very emotional ending. No one on this podcast laughed at that ending. No one.
I mean, I thought, well, I'm talking about in terms of like what they were trying to go for.
No, that was just a reference to something that happened. Like, Sean laughed at how Tanjiro versus Jonathan ended.
I did not, you son of a bitch!
It was very
I
cool.
had that episode at number 2. You and me had it at the bottom.
But yeah, this episode was just kind of...
It exists.
I think that's the worst part to say about a fight, because I wanted Martian Manhunter in Death Battle since Season 2. And after nearly 10 years of waiting, he's finally in, and he gets I wouldn't say bad episode, it's just passable. And that's all I could say for it. It's just passable. It's like when you eat a...
I wouldn't even go that far. I'd say it's a bad episode. It's got its moments, and then it's just click.
I think,
just falls flat.
It's different, and it's like a first time they're doing it in like this fully different way, so maybe if they ever do another episode like this...
Yeah, if they do another one later on that's similar in tone, by that point they should have more experience, and by then, hey, maybe we'll get a much better version of this.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Now, I will say, Death Battle do take criticism very well, and unlike another Versus show that I might have referenced in this episode already, so where Death Battle see criticism, especially for this season in general, they've taken, like, for instance, I think... not just us, I'm not saying we had an influence, but fans who were saying like, oh, the analysis is moving too quickly, we can't keep up with it. 2 episodes later, they're like, okay, we hear you, we'll slow it down for you. It's like, oh, great, they heard that. What was it? The advantage, disadvantages. People were saying, oh, it's kind of hard to tell which one's an advantage, disadvantage. Like, no problem, we'll bring the colours back for it. So I do hope they
I'm very happy that the colours are back.
Hashtag colours return. Does that sound racist out of context?
No.
We'll go
if anything, it's
Wait.
anti-racist.
Hashtag maybe racist. Hashtag let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. Anyway.
But I do think they'll hear what people say, because when I look in the comments of this episode, because I don't usually look in comments often because, you know, verse community is always fun to look into. But the thing I do notice, people that are praising this episode are mostly the members. Some of the members, I will say. But then the majority of people that are complaining about it are casual viewers. And in fact, if you look at the view count for this episode, that it hasn't really gone that far in terms of views.
I mean, it only just came out yesterday, dude.
Yeah,
Dragonborn
some
versus
episodes
Chosen
that have...
Undead, that got to nearly a
Yeah,
million
that's
in
the
one
thing.
day.
You usually get like a ton of... There are usually episodes that will like start trending immediately afterwards and stay high even like a day or two after.
I mean, take a look at last episode. What was the #1 trending video on YouTube again?
The Beat Mr. Beast.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and that's the thing as well, is that it's clear people aren't that invested in this. They're like casual viewers. Like, when this episode was announced,
I think even
people were like, okay.
I think it's also the burnout that happened with Marvel vs. DC, which Nemesis actually did an entire like 20-minute essay on that, why that might be the case.
I don't think so, because like people are still requesting Marvel versus DC matchups in the comments, and many of them are getting upvoted to hell. So I think it could just be like most of the vocal minority are speaking up about that, but it's not as bad.
But I think
as
it's also
a few
the level.
seasons.
I think also it's the popularity of these characters isn't high enough for it to really get to trending. all that much.
It could be that.
It's understandable. It happens.
Well, upon saying that, though, you got to think as well, like, Chosen Undead versus Skyrim, despite the fact popular games, when compared to Marvel and DC, though, not as popular, yet they were able to trend, and people are still going back to it. I'm still seeing new reactions to that. That came out, like, 2 weeks ago. I'm like, oh, I never saw this. It's like, oh, this was 2 weeks ago. In fact, now even Souls streamers are reacting to it, and they're like, oh my god, this is cool, and they even do a fight and stuff like that, so it's like... So that clearly had an impact, despite not being as popular as Marvel and DC.
Yeah, but I think it's because those games are, like, super popular in the public consciousness on their own, whereas with Marvel and DC, these are two characters that don't really have... The casual audience is going to know who Marvel is and who DC is, but they're usually ones that's like, well, I don't know this character really from the big budget MCU and DC movies, so I don't really care.
Like if this was like another Batman versus Spider-Man, I think a lot more people would be interested in that because
of course it's Batman and
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Those two are. Well, that's what I'm saying. Martian Manhunter and Silver Surfer aren't the popular guys anymore. They were for a time, like when their cartoons came out, but that's not the case nowadays.
Maybe that could also be a case, but I also just think it's that there's nothing memorable to go back on this episode. Again, I'm bringing this up a lot. Chosen Undead versus Dragonborn. At the top of my head, I can think of memorable moments like, oh, when they calculate the cheese, or oh, when they showed the Randy Savage dragon, or Chosen Undead is tragic origin story. Like when you look at most watched, people go back to that specific part because it's like, damn, that.
Well, I wouldn't even say that because, like we said, there are like a few memorable moments here. It's just it's surrounded by nothing. Whereas at least Chosen Undead versus Dragonborn has things happening throughout. Like it's not overwhelming, but there's still things happening without. It also has peak moments of like hilariousness or oh, that's a really awesome thing, stuff like that.
Yeah, but the other thing as well was that we haven't really talked about this, but I just completely forgotten how Martian Manhunter died until I saw it on the screen. Man, this death is... Okay, do you remember when I said Dimitri versus Guts?
It's long.
Do you remember when I said Guts versus Dimitri probably has the worst death this season? I'm just going to get on my knees right now. Guts versus Dimitri, I'm so sorry. You clearly have the superior death.
I do think it is definitely more brutal than most deaths we've gotten this year.
I mean, because you do see Martian Manhunter melt.
Also, I think we can add this to the calculation of how many characters have died via sun.
Well, it was a combination of sun and power cosmic, to be fair.
Yeah,
and funny enough, this one wasn't a Dragon Ball character.
Yeah, but the whole point I'm trying to say is that, May pointed out, it was so long, and because
I timed it, it was like 45 or 46 seconds.
And because Martian Manhunter... He didn't really utilize a lot of his powers. Like, is he going to do something clever, like he's going to stretch his limbs to get around and grab... So, like, I would have been perfectly fine if he got disintegrated, because that's how they said that's the only way to kill him. But why does he go out like a bitch? Like, for such a cool character, why does he go out like a pansy? At least for Guts versus Dimitri, you know what? He kept fighting until the end.
Mainly because the Berserker armor wouldn't let him do otherwise.
But you get my point. At least the fight,
I get what you're saying.
Whereas
like
Martian Manhunter...
Guts vs. Dimitri, I thought with that death was really interesting, even if it did kind of like was just a sudden stop, like it hit a brick wall. That's my one complaint I have with that episode. But here it's
that is very fitting for the Guts franchise.
But here's the thing:
exactly how he would die.
Thank you, Phil, for being a guest here. But
Phil,
even
stay
then,
out of this. Yeah, the adults are talking.
Here, but it's fitting here, but it's so slow and drawn out and agonizing. It's like, God damn it, we know what's happening. Just get to the end already.
I was just expecting Martian Manhunter. If he even just said GG at the end, that would have at least gotten a laugh out of me. But that would have at least made it memorable. Like, he goes, my wife, GG. Just disintegrated. Like, the fact that I wanted...
I also was like... I mean, I know you were talking about it, Martian Manhunter spoils, so that basically spoils what's going to happen. If they had taken that and put it as, like, his last thoughts, kind of like what we had with, Tanjiro's death or Tetsuo's death, or, like, these other characters, like, they know they're going to die, or they're obviously on death's door, so they're basically like in their final moments at peace. I think, yeah, maybe it'd be cool. But no, it's just...
Yeah, like, even though I'm saying this episode is my least favourite, I do want to end it on a bit of a positive note for me. I get that it's my least favourite, but to me though, that's me saying that this is just passable. So to me, I'm putting this episode as just a 6 out of 10. And that's mostly due to the analysis is really well written story. If the analysis was just your standard, like, if it was like Black Adam versus Apocalypse, where they just wanted to get through it just so they could get to the really good episode after, and also a really cool fight, then I probably would have put this episode at like probably a 3 out of 10. But good writing managed to help it a lot. So I will say, if I had to choose between either watching this or Batgirl versus Spider-Gwen, yeah, I'm choosing this episode. The episode has its moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not terrible, but I just wouldn't say it's even in my top 50. It's just on that range where if I'm... Who knows? This may be another episode where I might be like... We do a follow-up to our Were We Too Harsh on this? Maybe in a few years' time or a few months' time. Maybe we did look at this harshly. That's how the mindset I'm going into it, because there are many episodes I have this
I'd
similar
love
mindset.
if you thought that, like, tomorrow.
That's why I typically rewatch the episodes before I do my, like... actual ranking for the seasons list, because it's like, okay, this is my initial thoughts, give it some time based on what comes after, you know, what they tried, and, you know, compare it to everything else.
The best way I can describe this episode is it's a good appetizer for the main course of next time.